So welcome everybody. This is the next episode of the Resco Fireside Chat. My name is Ivan Stanyo. I'm a COO and evangelist at Resco. And today we're joined by our long-term partners, Higgins One. We have Jeremy and Kenny on the line. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Hello, hello. Good to see you again, Ivan.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, how are you? How's everything?
Hi, Kenny. Glad to see you. And I'm joined by my colleague, Trevor. Hello, Trevor.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good to see you, Trevor.
So our idea really is to talk in a very informal way about topics or current trends and things we feel could be interesting or are interesting to us and hopefully interesting to you as well. And to best start this whole conversation, we thought that we kind of think about how technology influences our lives and our customers' lives and the companies that we work with, right? And we've seen that some technologies, they disrupt things for a while, and then they slowly go away, and we never heard of those anymore. And then there are some technologies that kind of stay and really, really change how we approach things. So any ideas, any examples, guys, that you can think of things that come, disrupt, and leave, and we don't miss them anymore?
Segways, not the. You remember those?
I do.
Yeah, they were
the biggest announcement in the world. Segway, it's going to change your lives.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have one. Did anybody buy one?
I didn't.
No way. Too expensive for me.
Yeah.
I want to say they had stands for Segways at one point, though. I feel like just like the bike and the scooter, there was one city that adopted it as like a test pilot and then like plugged them up through the city and then charged people to use them. And then after a while, figured no one was using them. People would rather walk or, they'd rather not get on a dangerous device meant to get hit with a car. So,
Yeah.
True. A bit too much, huh? That thing. How about gamification, guys? Do you remember that? That's closer to MySpace CRM.
Oh my gosh.
Jeremy, how many times have you worked with companies who were like, we have to bring gamification to our sales teams?
Zero.
Zero?
It's funny though. We were talking in the past about gamification, and when we launched this company, it's been 9 years ago now, and that was the talk. Everything around CRM was gamification. Everybody, at least from the Salesforce side, right? They wanted their sales team to compete against each other and whatever the latest and greatest, metric that they could come up with and wrap it around some type of gamification was a must. And all the sales teams, had to compete against each other. And we've never done anything with gamification in 9 years, never. But it was the talk. No, I mean, right?
I remember I was going to a lot of Microsoft shows, and it was part of the keynote and how cool this is. And every bigger sales department is going to build their own teams that are going to compete against each other. It's not just one against another, like individuals, but these whole teams. And I'm like, oh, wow, it's so cool. And it's gone. And I think nobody's looking back.
No, not at all. Thank God.
I mean, I've got another really cool one. I'm sure you remember it. Google Glass.
Oh, yeah.
You remember the funny videos? Like a guy going out for a date and checking out all the details about his wannabe partner.
Yeah, not creepy at all.
Not at all.
And now didn't they come out with, was it Facebook Glass or was it
Snapchat?
Snapchat, yeah.
Still trying to figure out how the creepiness factor is but it's just, I don't know, it's just weird. And to your point, like everything that was the hype, and even putting CRM and other applications inside of Google Glass. I mean, there was a big presentation at Microsoft. I know you guys had an amazing.
Oh, we jumped right on that. We jumped right on that train. We built our own version of Resco Mobile CRM, optimized for Google Glass. A little card design, very simple, supporting all the cool gestures. And I say it, I don't care. I was calling the Gartner analyst, telling them like, we have this next cool thing, guys. We're ready. If you hear any companies asking for software for this cool new gadget, Google Glass, we're the ones.
We're there. We're there.
I think they were as surprised as any other customer would be if I called them, like, so not ready.
Well, I remember the one of the Microsoft conferences and the demo. So it was on the Windows, obviously, platform, but still, right? It's the same, and it was targeting aviation, and they were doing all these crazy things because the mechanic or technician couldn't use their hands. And I think it's a fantastic concept, but again, how practical was it? Or at least how many customers were you going to have that build planes? I don't know. It's only a handful of them out there, I think, but yeah, just not a big hit, but that was all the hype, like gamification and all things related. Summer swings and misses, as we do in
Sure.
baseball.
So do we feel the same about the AR VR headsets, or are they going to be a different thing?
A good question.
They have there's a few places that I know VR wise they've taken it seriously, where they've created like game zones where you have all VR, and they've probably spent a lot of money on getting this stuff adapted into like this giant warehouse building and trying to figure out the safety concerns behind it. I honestly, coming from a side of someone who loves video games and loves the idea of being able to be immersed in one, I don't know how tempting it is to want to walk around actually physically and exert myself for a video game. So I don't know, maybe it might be too much work. Maybe you might have to adopt it in a different way.
I think the AR piece, which you guys do with Houston, right? Like some form or fashion of it, I think that could be huge. Especially as we look at remote working and we look at mobility, being able to overlay, I don't know, concepts and not concepts, but designs or views that not being in person in this 2D whatever space, I think that becomes extremely valuable. I think it's still early, right, in terms of how you adopt it. But I mean, I can think of, I know clients like that we have that are in HVAC space. I think one of your demos talks about water fountains, and they're trying to repair, whatever's going on there. But I think at the end of the day, I think that could be hugely, huge, applicable to at least some of our customer base. Now, the VR space and all the rest, I think that's still very niche. I mean, we have people that can't use these things, let alone put this on and forget about that. Like, right? We still got people who can't use these computers that we're sitting here. So I think that's difficult to see.
The top into Jeremy's point, I've noticed, AR is being used. I mean, one of the things I noticed is if you go online, I mean, you can basically view a set of furniture, and you can take a picture and overlay that on top of an actual setup for a room. Like everything's kind of gone to the point where measurements and I guess things of that nature, like you might see an influx on that side. I don't know if it's going to be something on more of the leisure side, or if it can apply more to an actual office or structure in a company. But I think it's building it from the ground floor with it that might affect it more, and maybe not implementing it into a system that exists, but something that you start from ground up and say we want to implement this into. So some of your customers might look to just doing VR or something similar to that, and then working from there, and not saying we don't have a base to start on where we are already a paper company, for example, or something similar that just already has the policies in place, but looking at being completely free of having that as their like history in their background. Maybe just starting from that point might be where some places look to actually grow a lot faster, because you're crossing over to a new, I guess, style and format for how you are I guess producing any content or producing whatever products or services you have.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, here's when you look at any of these trends or predictions or technologies, I mean, the underlying theme, I think, for most of those that are disruptive that take place or hold is that simplification part. right? I mean, if it's overly complex, we talk about this quite a bit. Obviously, our tagline is simplifying technology, but at the same time, it's true. It's whether it was the segue or whether it was gamification, just setting these things up and understanding the rules is like so complicated. Or you just rode the segue off a cliff, which nobody thought was fun because the result there, right? But if it's not simple, people aren't going to use it. People are going to throw it away, and it's not going to have traction. And I think that's the overarching theme. So now what types of technology are coming down the pipeline that maybe make Google Glass or AR, VR easy to use? That to me is, kind of what's going to be needed in order to make those technologies successful.
Mm-hmm. True.
Fads or whatever.
I think that's the key. I use one good example for that, and that's the company called Slack.
Yeah.
Have you used Slack?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're not listening, but if they do, take that with I don't mean it bad way, but I don't think Slack necessarily brought a lot of like innovative way or tools or features, right? It's a kind of a communication and different channels or chatting rooms that been around forever. But the key was the simplicity.
Yeah.
And this was long time ago before Resco got the ISO certification and blah, blah, blah. But Resco was brought to, Slack was brought to Resco by a colleague of mine who worked at marketing department. She wasn't even in IT. She was able to install it, set it up, and bring everybody into Slack. And it was the most successfully used, internal app. Why? Because it was so easy.
Mm-hmm.
So easy.
Well, that's what, when you look at your solutions, when you think about, we talk about low code, no code, right? What's the value there? It's tremendous. And why is that? Because, well, now you don't necessarily need to call on your IT department to stand up an app specific to this business unit or to add this modification. Well, that's huge, because people love to talk about software and technology and hardware, but that's the techie guys. I don't know anything about that. But look what low code brings to the table and allows solutions and technology like what you guys provide. In theory, anybody could make that modification.
Mm-hmm. Is it good or bad though?
It's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Because when it breaks, what happens then? Let's play both sides, because it is a double-edged sword. You have a technology that, again, you can tout, position, and sell to businesses that, like I said, maybe your analyst on the back end can support this. You don't necessarily have to bring in IT for that. But what happens is then they get a taste and they love it and they want more, right? And so now they want to push the envelope to maybe connect this thing called Resco Mobile CRM to this thing called NetSuite, whatever. Pick your poison or whatever your next app is. Tableau, right? Well, that may not be a low code solution. It's not, right? But it's so they get a little taste of this and then they want to expand it. And I think that's where, not that it's a limitation, but then that changes the discussion again back to an enterprise app that may require some development or IT resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to maintain it in long term. I remember once I had a joint session with Microsoft at Resco Next, our annual conference,
Mm-hmm.
and the session was comparing capabilities of Power Apps and Resco, right? And one of the people in the audience, that guy was completely frustrated, and he kept asking the same question, like, guys, how can I minimize the amount of Power Apps? Because this is going crazy. Like, in my company, we have like 30 now, and I don't know what to do about it, because these users are just like, everybody's developing their own application. I don't know. I have to put a stop on it. This is going crazy, right? Yeah. So I can see that kind of other phase of the coin. And they're like, this must be trouble for the IT teams and architects, etc. Right?
Yeah, because they got to maintain it, right? And so there's another opportunity, though. How do you simplify that maintenance, that admin portion. And so there's multiple thoughts there, but one is some of the IT departments say you cannot purchase a piece of software or technology until you run it through me, IT department, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, that's one way to control it, but you know how that goes. Now you start fighting amongst the business units with the IT group. But on the flip side, if you're not going to run it by IT, you can't call on us and expect us to support it if it's not something we've seen or heard about. So that's one way. Another way is, how do you make the administration, the maintenance of that solution easier? Because again, that just minimizes the reliance on the IT function. But again, in all this, it just, wherever you sit on the equation, it's how do you make it easier, simpler? Whether you're the end user, whether you're the developer, whether you're the support team who has to keep it all afloat.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, and this is a question I'll ask, do you think it's possible for a support team to actually have a situation where they do find it easy to support? Because I feel like it's almost kind of sad that might be the nature of that beast in itself when it comes to supporting, is that you are dealing with those one-offs, those situations where you don't know, you don't know if the software is going to work. You try it out and then it just runs into the wall, and now you're trying to figure out how to dig yourself out of this, and trying to figure out how can you connect these two platforms to work seamlessly. Do you think it's the nature of the beast of support that, maybe for them it might not be easy, but maybe for the admin who isn't, the support team, do you think that would be a lot easier, just as a normal, just as a, the procedure of everything? This admin would always have the easiest task, and then the support team would always be that escalated source that constantly deals with those problems.
It's possible. We've got clients now, whether it was the implementation of Resco or some other solution, that we come in, we engage, we help stand up the solution, whatever it is, and then we're out. We don't need to stick around and continue to, as much as we have great relationships, knock on wood, with all of our clients, they don't need us. Now we've got implementations of other same with Resco and other where, absolutely, we're on support contracts for annual, multiple years. And it just depends, right? It depends on the complexity of the solution, complexity of the business, the number of users, what type of IT staff they have or don't have. But again, the beauty, in my opinion, the real deal breaker, or not deal breaker, but what really sets Resco apart is that ability to do low code, no code. That's one. And their other one, which maybe we'll talk about here at another time, is their offline capabilities, right? Because you've got a lot of solutions out there that claim to be offline. No. And the truth is, it's like, and it always goes back to that thing we were talking about at the beginning of how easy it is to be whatever. Yeah. In this case, offline, theirs works. Synchronization works. Yep. 100% offline until I come back into an area that has Wi-Fi or cell, and it's just easy.
Yeah.
Now,
so do you
the
think
solution's not easy, but the technology, the development was not easy. These guys, kudos to them. But as a consumer or as an end user, it's easy.
Yeah, the end result or the experience should be easy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think we're still gonna need offline in 21st century with 5G and Kenny's favorite telecommunication provider, Verizon?
Oh yeah, of course. Absolutely. Of course. I don't. My opinion of offline is that it's almost like, it's constant. It's like having a backup generator. Like, I think always having something where you can save and store, like, you're always going to need your light. You're always going to need your water to work. You're always going to need the lights to turn on. You're always going to need certain things to work in order to properly work. And those offline features are the features that I think are the backup generator, where you aren't online anymore. Now you're no longer connected with this web of people, and these resources can't reach out to you, or I guess these resources can be shared. And offline is that lifeline to getting to that civilization, back to them. And I think until we have a situation where you can go to, the Ozarks and, sit in the middle of the forest and actually get 4 bars or, whatever amount you can get out of that, I think that it's just going to be impossible to constantly always assume you're going to be online. Even in general, in transition, you can leave your house and, your Wi-Fi cuts off when you get to a certain point. And next thing you know, now you're working off of your data, which sometimes it's not seamless transition that, Wi-Fi is still trying to pull from your phone. And, you've got a situation like that, but that offline kind of it alleviates that stress of switching over where you are truly able to still operate at an efficient pace versus, you jump offline and everything's frozen and you can't share key details when you do jump back online because that transition's ruined just the process itself.
But what about going back to our first topic and things that stick and things that don't in technology? What about 5G? I mean, that was the second coming. And I don't care if you're religious or not. Like that was going to be the best thing was 5G. And we have 5G in this area. I noticed zero difference from my old 4G or whatever the heck it was. It's not a game changer, at least not yet. And I don't know if that's, I'm sure there's some reason for that. But at the end of the day, it's not a game changer in terms of speed. It's certainly not in terms of coverage. But yeah, and even when you have coverage, right, and the satellites are up there, we've got coverage across the globe, even out in the middle of the ocean. I think there's going to be points in time, whether it's a security scenario, whether it's you name it, that you're going to want to be offline and still be able to function.
Yeah.
I know we have some customers for whom offline is a must for security purposes. They go into factories where they can't have any device that is connected to internet because it's a possible, a security hazard. It's funny.
No, I think what I'm hearing too is a big takeaway when we talk about trends is really less about the impact necessarily on the technical advancement, like 5G per se, but really like Jeremy, what you were saying about, the quality of life or how does it affect the end user's experience? I mean, coming from even the agency world, like in experiential marketing and activations and things, sometimes you can amaze people with the simplest or the oldest of technologies. So it's really like, how do you use what's out there at your disposal to change that quality of life? I know we talked about Google Glass and it's not applicable, AR for, checking your like social media or something as you walk down the street may not be applicable. But if I'm a field service worker that has some sort of wearable, I know, even we have Zebra integrations and whatnot, that's now less about the technology and more about the use case and how that transforms an experience. And I think that really is, our advantage at Resco and, is indicative of what sticks, right? Is the things that, really can transform that end user experience or whatnot, rather than just the technology itself. Even with, as you said, Yvonne, like having offline for, a specific use case, that it's not just about the technology, but it's about how does that transform your solution or how you work. And I think that, that I think is a bigger takeaway is having trends that actually impact your use case or impact your experience rather than just, technology advancement for the sake of itself.
True. You convinced me, guys. We'll do a separate episode on offline.
I'm on board. I'm telling you, it is just unbelievably powerful.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do that. We'll do that. Might be one of my favorite topics anyway.
Do you think, and this is a question, I mean, anyone can answer, obviously, do you think offline will be almost married to storage at this point then? Because, I mean, that's one of, I think, the biggest things to me when you think offline is, data storage and size of, I guess, how much you can actually store on the device you're using.
Storage and performance probably as well, right?
100%, because now you're twofold, right? And you've got storage, like you mentioned, on the device itself, which grows and grows, right? We continue to see the increase there, and the performance as well. Every year we double or whatever, triple, but at the end of the day, same double-edged sword, because what happens is now people look and go, I've got whatever 256, 512 storage on this device right here. Well, now I'm not going to make any business decisions around that data set. I'm just going to bring it all down, and that's not a good design. That's a cop out, right? That is just, hey, just bring it all down. Now your performance starts to slow down, and really the question is, well, why do you have that much data? And I hope, we'll talk about data here in a few minutes, because we've been saying for a while, we do believe that becomes a transition in the future around, dollars, how you're going to get revenue, you being Microsoft, Resco, I have no idea. But the point is, these companies are going to move to that data pricing model as opposed to a license model, I think. So now you really need to be cognizant of what data you're collecting, how much, and it's no different than, your home, and God forbid these hoarders who just keep buying and piling up stuff. At some point, you've got to get rid of it. It's no longer valuable. So yeah, I think, as the increases in data storage on the devices, and then that synchronization on and offline, back and forth becomes, that's been out there, that's been valuable. But now, what types of data do we want to, or how much data do we want to synchronize? It's extremely important to sit down and grind that out to make that decision.
Yeah, now especially, you look at, I think the trend is to there. Everything is now an app. You look at, I find it funny. So many channels, like if you really don't have like cable, for example, you can download every app for every channel and access it almost identically to the channel itself. And a lot of times now, a lot of companies, they have just, cable login or, provider login. And now that's the new trend. But you also have all this data that now is being, added to your phone from just these apps. And then even in some of those apps, they allow you to download the actual full, length episode, or, whatever movie or content that you're looking at. And it's funny because you watch the phone kind of, like you don't notice it again, like Jeremy said, you bought, 5 something, or you bought a gig, and now you're just running through it. And then you add this offline feature, which should be storing too as well. So the question is, like Jeremy said, I think it's going to go to a form of, you're buying data, not the actual product anymore. You're looking at your phone and saying, I can get a phone. It cost me $100 less to get the phone for, X amount of gigs versus this amount of gigs. And it's just, that's a transition I think we're going to see in the future, is a lot of data being the key element of pricing.
True.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Oh, wise one. I love it. No, it's
Left us speechless.
Well, because let's run with that.
Let me go ahead.
Keep that like topic going, right? You got now massive amounts of data that we're all collecting because it's become so cheap, and these apps are doing some amazing things that allow, through the low code capabilities, allow business units to go off and develop them. Now, always, like we talk about, the challenge is getting that information out. Because what's the point? Why are we doing any of this? And for most companies, not all, but for most companies, it's so that they could make better, smarter business decisions, or maybe they're selling that data set or whatever, right? But they're collecting this information either because of some legal requirement, if you're maybe a municipality or a government entity or whatever, or you're in this business and you need to make smarter business decisions. Well, collecting too much or the wrong pieces of information. Contacts. Let's talk about contacts. How cleaned up is your contact list? We've had contacts for how many years? That's what we do. We're CRM people, right? I'd love to see, I want to see the first person that responds to your, this YouTube video or whatever medium that it goes out on that tells me that they've got a perfect contact list.
Yeah.
And so who spends the time to go back and clean it up? Very few. Promise you. And it's only going to get worse. That's just contacts. So accounts, the information that is being collected on these things that for us right now is enormous from a business standpoint. For us is this thing called inspections.
Mhm.
Wow. We just opened up the floodgates to the information that our customers are now collecting and trying to make some business decision on. And it's just going to get worse. Good problem, great problem, right? But through these inspections, now they're collecting information that they want to print, email, put into a data warehouse, run some metrics on, and get some decision off of. But we don't even know what their contact list is. Half of them are empty. They got a phone number.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what your take is on like what companies gonna do with all the data. I have two good examples. A couple of years ago, I met with one guy. He was from a company in Europe, and he literally posed the question away like, guys, we're already collecting data on everything. Like they're filling up the dish soap in public bathrooms, etc. So they collect data there, like how frequently they empty and everything you can think of, right? And he was sitting there saying like, I have like gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes and terabytes and terabytes and terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data, and I don't know what to do about it, right? If we collect all the information, all these little like signal here, signal there, we know, but we don't know what to do about it. Like it's great, we have it sitting in our data warehouse, but I have no idea what to do about it, right? Or with it actually.
Yeah.
So that's one kind of like we were sitting there at the table and it's like a group of, I don't know, 5-6 people, and we couldn't find one good thing to kind of mine out of all of that, right? So like that poses a question like, does it make sense to collect everything, right? Or so much data? And then I have another example. I talked to a company last week, and they're in house inspection business, and they have to take pictures of everything. So like their one questionnaire can easily have 200 to 300 pictures. And that's you talked a little bit about performance, and you talked a lot, Kenny, about storage, right? But 200 to 300 pictures as part of every questionnaire, that's potentially, I don't know how many thousands of pictures per day.
That's expensive.
Right. And the question I have after that is, okay, when you collect this data, now the question is, how do you mine that data? How do you use, like you said, how do you utilize it? But also, if you do have to go back and look for specifics, I mean, I noticed that now you can start, you can tag things in pictures, you can add notes, you can always have things that but how many people are actually utilizing the full ability of that picture to like go ahead and archive it properly, where it's just not a picture on a question, but it's also a picture leading to an answer that you're looking for in the future, whether it's 5-10 years down the road. We have to look back, and oddly enough, I find in most cases you don't have a certain amount of time, unless you're dealing with some agency of some law. You really don't go back that far in your records, because usually that stuff obviously like falls to the wayside. You got your metrics for the year, you move on. But I do realize that like there is a lot of data collection, and you're right, it's sitting in warehouses of like not being used, and do you get rid of it or do you keep it? The age old question, is it useful? Is there any use to it? And, I like to think like it is like hoarding, but the weird part is it's hoarding that because you can't see it, it just doesn't bother as much, until you have to, I guess, pay for it, So on the side of, where you're in a house, it's full of newspapers, you see it, it clutters, but in that storage area, it doesn't really clutter in your eyes. So, as long as money wise, you can, contribute to paying for that storage, it just kind of hides behind this, cloak of, I don't see it, out of mind, out of sight, out of sight, out of mind.
But what people also don't realize, some people do, but companies, that's a huge risk, right? So think about it from companies on the legal side. All it takes is one disgruntled employee to file a lawsuit. Now, all of that, unless you've got a data retention record or policy in place, which most sensible companies would, now all of that data that you've been collecting is subject to whatever, lawsuits, subpoenas. Okay, now I need to go pull that. I got to pull that. I can't even run a report with it. You need me to go get that photo that I took on a inspection 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So you've got risk that's associated with all this data collection. You've got performance hits. And then, like I said, what if, I don't want to say God forbid, but what if and when the financial equation shifts from, take the 4 of us, we got 4 licenses today, but what if we got umpteen terabytes, petabytes of data sitting back there that we've been collecting, and like you mentioned, your friends like, hey, I don't even know what to do with this. And now the shift on the pricing revenue model becomes the amount of data that you've collected. I don't know if that makes sense, but at some point in time, what data you have and or how you've collected it, it might become extremely costly, whether through risk and, like I said, subpoenas of information that you need to provide, or now all of a sudden your enterprise ERP vendor says you can have 10 million people accessing that app because I want you to collect more data and I'm going to charge. Like, I mean, I used to, now it's probably a terrible time to bring it up, but it's like, what would people do if Facebook started charging?
Oh, oof.
You know, nobody likes Facebook today, maybe, but the point is, you know, everybody's hooked on that, right? And there's ad revenue, and obviously that's how they're paying their bills. But what if they started charging tomorrow? Would people stop? Would people pay the $1, $10?
I mean, I honestly think, and this is sounds, I think people pay. I think I could see more people paying $1. You know, if it goes to $14.99, like if it's a Netflix subscription, you know, obviously we'll have some people who are, you know, a little bit, you know, pulled back and reserved about it. But if it's $1 a month, I could see a lot of people staying with the platform because they use it so much. But I think it becomes a curve where, you know, the more you charge, the more you see the drop off of users. And I think it goes back to saying, like, Facebook is a good analogy for, you know, if you start charging for data, you know, per terabyte, and it starts becoming an expense, now you start to look at that warehouse. Now you notice that your garage is filled with newspapers. And you start to say, like, I'm paying for all this storage. I got to start throwing these out. You know, I can take the one where Nixon was elected, but let me go ahead and get rid of the one with the trial. Like, you know, things like that. You know, you always want to clean up, you know, to a point. And I think it's a good important point to make. You know, what if you are charged data by, you know, how much you use and how much you have? I mean, we're so used to, I think, getting a bulk of data given to you that, you know, I've known people in other countries who data-wise, even on their phone, they get the slowdown after a certain point. They know it too. You know, we can only have so much data used in the house before we get our, you know, our network needs to reset. We need to get our, you know, we need to go through our monthly cycle. And it's so funny to see that coming from where we're at, where it's, you know, if my internet slows down, you know, if you guys see me lag, I'm calling the company and I'm letting them know I pay for X amount. And, you know, that I think it's to the point where if we do switch that pricing model, a lot of things will change. I think a lot of people will tighten up, you know, and you'll see a lot more, I guess, conservative, you know, like nature in terms of technology and how far we're willing to save data and actually track metrics or, you know, track things like photos. You know, maybe 200 photos goes to one per inspection because, you know, we don't want to pay for 200 photos. So that's a good point to make. I think it's on the mighty dollar to decide whether or not, you know, like that pricing model, if it fits, you know, then, you know, it'll fit.
True.
But imagine being an end user, like we were talking before, just operating a cell phone, an iPad, whatever it is, iMac behind you, you name it. Like again, I can only think about that cell phone provider, like you said, you're capped at a certain amount of data. Doesn't it drive you nuts? Because you're like, I have no idea where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's on my phone and I got to go look it up. But what if I make this phone call over, Wi-Fi? Okay, I'm okay there. But now I'm going to go browse this, you know, and start watching this YouTube movie out, you know, whatever. How much data is that? Nobody knows. Like the average person doesn't know, right?
Yeah.
And so again, going back to the business side, which is what we're all here in that discussion, you're going to have a revolt, whether it's capping of data and people are going to push back. On the business side, if these end users, whether it's sales, you know, field service technicians, if it's too complicated, they're not going to touch it. They're going to take those Google glasses off. throw it right in the trash. And then we're all going to be back to, paper, wherever that, I don't even have any paper.
That works great as a final thought.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
all gonna go back to paper. Started with technology that's gonna change our lives, and ending the conversation with, "Oh, we all gonna go back to paper." I think now we can pull the plug and finish this up.
Oh, I love it. I love it. No, but that's our jobs, right? That's our jobs as technologists. We love bells and whistles. Oh, look, there's a squirrel, the next shiny object. That's what we love, because we're tend to be kind of geeky, whatever. And we, being coming from a baseball background, build it and they will come. It's not necessarily true in technology. And so if it doesn't simplify a person's life, if it doesn't simplify their job, which is, again, most of us, what we're doing here, it's not going to be adopted. It's not going to be embraced, and they'll move on from it. And
Yeah.
I think that's our responsibility. And I think that's our jobs as technologists, is to make sure that it's meaningful and make sure that it can be an improvement on whatever their role is.
True. Yeah, that's kind of why I like your job so much, because a lot of times we at Resco, we were coming up with these different ideas and features and functionality, and some of it makes a lot of sense and some of it doesn't. And end of the day, it's partners like you, Higgins One, right, who makes the most sense out of it and really builds that bridge between what the crazy guys at Resco were thinking and what the customers really need, right?
Well, yeah, no, you're right. It's a true partnership, because, I mean, again, you guys have been around and been doing this for so long, and you push the envelope in areas that some people never think about. And like you said, some of them are grand slams, and then some of them, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that makes sense, maybe not, but that's the beauty of the partnership.
Yeah. Great. Guys, I think as a first episode, I think that was awesome. And we identified a couple of topics, I think, that that we can take into the episodes 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
But this was great. So I say, let's stop right here and save some of the content for the next show.
I like that.